Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. This is the second of two in a row webinars specifically designed for the Australia region of BNI, who is just joining us on BNI Connect. This webinar is specifically for presidents and other really leadership team members in BNI. And what we're going to do is cover some of the leadership team functions here in BNI Connect. Now, in looking at the list, I do recognize quite a few names from our first webinar just in this last hour. I'm going to try to not repeat a lot of the topics that we just covered in the last hour. Would like to say to all the new people that are on this webinar that all of the last webinar was recorded, and this webinar will also be recorded. It is a live webinar, so that means that as we're going through the webinar today, please do feel free to ask questions. We don't have a time limit on this one, so I will do my absolute best to answer every single question that you guys pose. This webinar is being recorded. Now, all of our recorded content can be found in a couple of different places. The first place is if you're in BNI Connect. So once you're able to log into BNI Connect, click on the question mark in the upper right-hand corner, right here in the upper right-hand corner. That will take you over to the support site. And on the support site, you will see all of our upcoming webinars. So for example, we do have a webinar coming up this coming Tuesday Eastern time or Wednesday in Australian time. We're going to be talking about the member tools and reports. But if you scroll down, you'll see chapter training and documentation. This webinar today will be part of the May 2015 series of webinars. You can review any of the webinars that we do. You can view them here. Or you can go directly to our YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. And once you get to that site, you'll be able to see all of our recorded content. I recommend if you'd like to see new videos, go ahead and subscribe to our channel up there. We have a ton of recorded content, not just every webinar we've ever done, but also things like short educational moments. So especially as you guys are coming on to BNI Connect for the first time, if you'd like to teach your chapter things about BNI Connect, you can use these educational moments if you have multimedia available in your chapter. There's also things like special messages from Dr. Meisner and other demos and tips and tricks and all sorts of stuff up there. All right, but today what I'd like to do is to go into some of the other topics that leadership teams and especially presidents are going to care about with BNI Connect. So in the Vice President webinar, just in the last session, we covered things like the PALMS report. We covered things about online renewals. We covered things with the online slips. What I'd like to cover now is some things about especially visitors. One of the goals of, I think, every president in BNI ever has been that we really want to grow our chapters. And especially with the visitor function in BNI Connect, one of the ways that we can do that is by using some of the tools that BNI Connect has as far as visitors go. I'll show you how to really work with visitors, how to invite them, how to pre-register visitors for meetings, and how to follow up with visitors. We'll also look at some of the other reports that are in BNI Connect as far as being able to run a successful chapter and look at some of the statistics and the other things here in BNI. And I will also leave plenty of time for questions at the end of this one. Again, I know there's a lot of people that are on this webinar that were also on the previous webinar. So if you do have additional questions, feel free to raise those questions. And this time, I promise I will stay on until hopefully we have every single question answered. All right, so back to the topic at hand. So one of the things that I want to cover today is really working with visitors. And when we talk about visitors in BNI Connect, there's a bunch of different things that you need to know about visitors. Now, I wrote a manual on visitors. Yes, an actual manual on visitors when it comes to BNI Connect. If you'd like to see or have a copy of that manual, it is a 53-page manual on all of the different things that you can do in BNI Connect with visitors. If you'd like a copy of this, please send an email to me. My email is support@bniconnect.com. Support@bniconnect.com. Say, I would like a copy of the visitor's manual. I will be happy to send that to you. But here's the overview of the visitor process in BNI Connect. So we have the inviting visitors process. We also have the registration of visitors, and then we have the follow-up of visitors. The first two things happen before the meeting, and the last thing happens after the meeting. So while, again, the visitor hosts and the secretary treasurers are mostly going to be responsible for a lot of the data input on this, I think it's very important to look at this process because it can really help you to grow your chapter. So as I did in the last one, this is the home screen in BNI Connect. So a lot of the online slips function is going to be here. This is also where members can see their participation in BNI based on the PALMS reports. But what we want to do is go beyond the home page here. Now, in order to get beyond the home page, we do need to go up to these menu items at the top. Network is going to be all of the networking functions, all of the social media stuff, the connections, the groups, the testimonials. Operations is the day-to-day operations. The input in BNI Connect is all going to be done under operations. And reports is going to be all of the output. So it's only going to be things getting statistics out. So when we're working with visitors, the first step in this process is sending visitor invitations. So I'm going to go to the operations menu. And again, operations is going to be where we have our day-to-day operations. So we have the visitors functions, meeting management, as we went over in the last webinar, is going to be where your vice presidents go to do the PALMS reports and the PALMS summary reports. This is also where, and we have a question here from Glenn Anthony that says, can the system do about speakers? There isn't a bio check, unfortunately, but the place where the secretary treasurer is going to go to enter the speakers for the week is going to be under meeting management, view edit speakers, and that's where you would enter the speaker rotation for the week. There's also managed memberships where you can also review pending applications and things like that. There is an entire goals program. Now, I'm not going to have time, I don't believe, to get into this today, but the goals program is pretty cool. I do a whole webinar on this if you ever want to join me for one of these webinars or view the recording of it. But it allows you to work with your chapter and especially your leadership team and say, we'd like to pass this many referrals in the next 6 months. We'd like to have this many visitors. We'd like to grow our chapter to be this many members. And you can set your goals for the next 6 months. Then BNI Connect will take your PALMS reports and your visitors and your one-to-ones and your thank you for closed business and your memberships and say, here's where you've gotten to with your goals, and it'll track it along the way. That's this goals program. It's a pretty cool thing that you can look at. Again, I have a whole webinar dedicated to that, so we don't have too much time to go on that today. There's also a mentoring program. And what I really want to show you guys is this create email function. So as I went over with the vice presidents earlier, the first thing in here is email my chapter. And email my chapter allows you to get the most recent distribution list of email addresses for your chapter. So if you need to get a message out to your chapter, you can click on email my chapter, copy and paste this into your own email program, and be able to send an email to your entire chapter. As Bob had mentioned, and I see Bob here again with this webinar, as Bob mentioned in the last webinar, if you're using Mac Mail or a Mac program, you may need to replace all of the semicolons with commas. You can do that by just doing a find and replace in Word or in Notepad or something like that. But what I wanted to show you when it comes to visitors, I want to email a visitor invitation. Now, the whole goal of this is to increase the number of visitors that are coming to your chapter. One of the things that I know as a member, and I don't think I introduced myself properly on this webinar, but I am a member of BNI. I've been a member since 2002. I've held just about every leadership team position in my chapter. I'm also a director consultant. At one point, I was the area director, managing 20 chapters and a half a dozen directors and about 500 members here in Rhode Island. But as a member, as well as somebody on the leadership team, one thing that we do struggle with in BNI is to invite people to BNI. And that's because a lot of times we don't necessarily know the right things to say when we're inviting somebody. What this visitor invitation helps to do is to standardize that a little bit. It helps to fill in the gaps of what we may not know what to say. As a director consultant, it helps us to remember the information of all the chapters that we're supporting. So we don't always have to know the address of where they meet and look up the information every single time. So let's say I wanted to invite somebody to the chapter and I was at a network event. I said, hey, why don't you come to BNI? I can follow that up with an email now and say, okay, I met somebody. His name was John Smith from Smith Co. Now, I'm going to put my own email address in here so you guys can see what this looks like. We do not track these in any way. There's no reports. We're not tracking email addresses or how many invitations are being sent out. So all this was meant to do is to send out a quick email invitation. So if you'd like to test this out, just send a message to yourself. So I could say, hey, John, it was great meeting you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. Click send, and in a second, I should get that email into my inbox. And here it is. You can see that this has a nice BNI graphic here. Then has the personal message as the first paragraph. It was great meeting you at the networking event. It then tells them I happen to be inviting them to the Burr chapter at the Cool Breeze Cafe. We meet on Wednesdays at 5:30. It then briefly explains what BNI is, lets them know that they're looking for somebody in that profession, and to RSVP with you. If somebody hits reply to this, it will go to your email address that's on record in BNI Connect. And Jennifer, I did just see your message. I'm glad you were able to work it out. Now, what's the next step in this process? So now we've invited somebody and somebody comes back to us and says, you know what? Yeah, I'd really like to visit your chapter. One of the newer things in BNI Connect that we just put in about a year ago is the ability to pre-register people for an upcoming BNI meeting. Now, this pre-registration process happens, this is the second part of the process, so we just invited somebody. We can pre-register people in two different ways. Now, the purpose of pre-registering people is to get more people to show up at your chapter meetings. One of the reasons that people don't show up to your chapter meetings is that you invite somebody in, oh yeah, come to my BNI meeting. Well, oh God 30 happens and their alarm goes off and they're saying, you know what, nobody's going to miss me. I've been to 100 of these networking events. Not a big deal if I skip this one. When you register somebody for the meeting, it changes things a little bit. Now, all of a sudden, there's an expectation that they should show up to the meeting. They get a registration message right away saying, you have now registered to visit this meeting. There's also the ability to send an email to the leadership team. So the leadership team gets notified, by the way, a visitor just registered to visit your meeting. The visitor hosts get notified, hey, somebody just registered to visit that meeting. Your director consultant gets notified. And then 2 days before the chapter meeting, the visitor gets notified again saying, just a reminder, you registered to visit this meeting. This will, I guarantee you, have more people actually show up to your chapter meetings. So let's take a look. How do we register somebody? So somebody comes back to us and says, yes, I'd like to come to the meeting. So on the inside of BNI Connect, on the logged in members portion, we can do that through the operations menu. And again, we're under manage visitors here. And one of them says register a prospective visitor before a meeting. Now, this is a very simple form. All we need to do is fill this out. I happen to be visiting the Shiver chapter or the Burr chapter in the Shiver region. I'm just going to drop down and choose consulting and computer consulting and the visit date. You'll notice I can only choose future dates. The first name, my name is here, and Jeremy Walsh, and the company name and the address. Phone number is mandatory, and email address is also mandatory because this is going to kick off that whole email function. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Now, as a prospective visitor, I am going to get an email immediately saying somebody has just registered you and you are confirmed to visit the Burr chapter. So now I again am establishing the expectation that I need to go to this chapter meeting. Tells me to bring plenty of business cards and that I'll meet tons of other people. And again, I'll get a similar message 2 days before the meeting. Now, the other way is that on your regional and your chapter websites, visitors can register themselves to visit the meeting. So let me take a look at that real quick. So let's say that I'm somebody and I heard about BNI and I'm interested in the Antarctica region of BNI. I'm up here browsing the Antarctica site, and I'm going to go and look for some chapters. And I see the list of chapters here. I have the Burr chapter. I have the Frozen Assets chapter. I've got the Polar Referrals chapter. But this Burr chapter, they meet on Wednesdays at 5:30. That's a good time for me. I'm going to go click on that chapter. I can see they have 24 members, and it looks like Marky Mark is in that group, and Ricky Martin. Got Art Garfunkel. Looks like a pretty cool chapter. I'm going to go and visit this chapter. So I click on the Visit This Chapter button, and here is where visitors can register themselves as well. Again, this is on the public internet. It's the same exact form. The only difference is that they do need to type in who invited them, and they do need to copy in a CAPTCHA code to make sure that they're not just a robot registering for these chapters. All right, we have a couple of questions that have popped up. Scott says, can we modify these email invitation templates? So the email invitations that come in, all of this information here. So for example, this BNI Burr chapter, we meet on Wednesday at 5:30. That information is all pulled automatically based on your chapter information. So it's not something you even need to modify. That's inserted for you. So it pulls that information from the database. So as far as the rest of the verbiage here, that's something that if you feel that needs to be changed, please talk to your director consultant or your executive director. They have the ability to modify that at the regional level, but it does affect all of the chapters and all of the invitations that get sent out for the entire region. Let's see, Jacob says, and I guess Bob and Jacob both ask about the prepayment. So some of the venues are very expensive. How do you accept prepayment? What I would say for that is that you may want to talk in the template about pre-registering. You could do that separately. There might be some ways to do that, either through a maybe events or something like that. There isn't a direct way to do it through the default mechanism, but we probably can find a workaround for that. So Bob and Jacob, why don't we talk about that offline a little bit and see if there's a solution that we can put in place for that. All right. Haley asks about the questions being asked. If you're a director or an executive director, contact me afterwards and we can discuss that. So, all right. So that second part of the process is now that we have registered visitors. The other thing about this is that it now does things like you now have a registered visitors report. So if I take a look at the reports now, I go over to the reports section. In this list of reports, I have to scroll down a little bit, but you'll also see a visitor registration report. So now I can really look at the pipeline for my chapter. So I can look, let's say, through the end of the month and see all of the visitors that are registered here to visit over the course of the next couple of weeks. This is especially helpful for things like visitors days and stack days. And the great part about this is that you can see who's actually inviting them. So this is a little bit of an accountability piece in order to help you to run those visitors days and those stack days and the other events in your chapters. Now, the final part of this process is when you start pre-registering people, you can then mark their attendance. So you can both mark people that have pre-registered and add people that have not registered for the meeting. So we do that again through the operations menu because we're doing input here. So we're going to go to manage visitors and we can go to manage registered visitors. Here I can do a search and see all the visitors that have registered. We have a lot of John Smiths and Jeremy Walshes here. But if somebody came to the meeting, we can go ahead and click on the edit button. Here we can do things like reschedule them for a future meeting by changing the visit date. Or if they actually came to the meeting, all we need to do at this point, and this makes your visitor host's job a lot easier, is just click on the visitor attended button. There's also the opportunity to choose whether or not to add the visitor to POMS. Some reasons why you may not want to add them to the POMS report is if they're maybe the second, the third, the fourth visit, or maybe even that they aren't an eligible visitor. Thing to keep in mind is that with the adding them to POMS, this does affect your traffic lights reports. One of the metrics in the traffic lights reports is the visitor conversion rate. The visitor conversion rate is just taken by the number of visitors in your POMS reports divided by the number of new members during that same time period. The rest of the form, you just need to go through and verify who invited the person, fill out any remaining information, and then choose whether or not you want to send the follow-up email. Once you click submit, it will register that visitor and it will send a thank you follow-up letter to that visitor. So I just got an email saying, thank you for visiting the BNI Burr chapter. It gives me some of the benefits. And now that we're starting to develop a visitor database, this gives us the opportunity to follow up with the visitors later as well through things like the visitors report. All right, let's see. Glenn and Naomi have a couple of questions here. Naomi says, can anyone register a visitor or only leadership? So the default permissions, and again, this may or may not have changed, but anybody should be able to go to Operations Chapter and click on Register a Prospective Visitor. Now, the way permissions work is that depending on what your level is, you may or may not see certain functions, but everybody should see Register a Prospective Visitor. And then regardless, you should always see the option on your regional website, as well as on your chapter website. So that function will always exist there. So hopefully that helps, Naomi. Paul asks, can leadership teams see which other chapters visitors may have visited in the past? And unfortunately, the chapters only have the ability to view their own chapter visitors, as well as really their own chapter statistics for all of those things. Glenn says, can you quickly touch on traffic lights? I guess everybody here is familiar with the CATS reports, but not necessarily traffic lights. Sure, the traffic lights, very quickly. This actually segues over into the next part of this. And let's talk about some reports, some of the chapter level reports here in BNI Connect. So to get to the reports, I'm going to go to the reports menu. And as a matter of fact, let me switch out of Antarctica here. And I'm going to switch to my own chapter and my own region so we can get some real statistics, not just one from our test region here. All right, so this is my own chapter, the Wakefield chapter of BNI. So let's take a look at some of these chapter reports. So to just touch on what Scott and Paul and some other people are saying, looking at the chapter traffic lights report. So this is one of the reports in the list here. It's called the chapter traffic lights report. This is a report that much of the world uses. Again, I know you're more familiar with the CATS report. The traffic light report, this really, it weights certain statistics in your chapter and gives you points for each of those statistics, and then gives you a traffic light score. So it rates the chapter size, the member growth, the retention, referrals, visitors, conversion, absenteeism. Then gives you a score between 0 and 100. 80 to 100 is a green light. 60 to 80 is, 50 to 80 is the yellow light. 30 to 50 is a red light, and below 30 is a gray light. So again, that's very, very quickly what the traffic lights is. I'm not sure if you're going to be using it in Australia or not, but that is a report that is referred to within BNI often. So Bob says that in his region, you guys are using the traffic lights. So that is how to access the traffic lights. Scott says about email templates and the payment gateways. Scott, let's take that one offline and I can tell you how to add payment gateways. That is done separately from the templates. Bob says, can the regional office track visitors across chapters? And the answer to that is yes. There is a regional visitor report that's available to directors and executive directors. Paul says, can you check how many times a visitor has visited a chapter in the past? For that, what you could do is you can use this chapter visitor report. And as long as you're recording your visitors, regardless of whether you're recording them in the Palms, I can run a visitor report, let's say from January of this year through the end of the month. And this will give me a visitor report. It will give me all of their information, when they visited. And from here, I can use this list. I can even sort it, let's say, and look for duplicates and find out people that have visited multiple times. So to answer your question, yes, you can use the visitor report in order to track multiple visits there as well. John says, can visitors go to BNI Connect Global and fill in visitor details? The answer to that is no. In order to get into BNI Connect Global, you do have to have a login. However, visitors can go to your chapter website or your regional website. So each region has their own website as well. So for example, I happen to be in the BNI Rhode Island region here in the United States. And again, if I'm a visitor, I could go and I could even use this interactive map here. Let's say I'm going to visit a chapter, and I go and I click on one of the links for the chapter. And from here, I can click on visit this chapter and fill the form out myself. So again, you don't have to have a login in order to be able to do that. Any visitor or any person that's on the internet can register themselves to visit a chapter. Lynn Lynn says, are traffic lights used for tracking against other chapters? The traffic lights, the intention of the traffic lights is not to be a contest. It's really meant to be an activity report. One of the great things about the traffic lights is that theoretically everybody could be scoring 100 and be tied with each other, because it's not, again, it's not a first place, second place, third place thing. It's again, it's more of an activity report. So hopefully does that make sense, Lynn? Does that help? All right, so let's take a look at some of these other reports that are in the system here from a leadership team perspective. So I talked in the previous webinar about some things like the training and the roster report, the membership dues report. Let's take a look at some of the other reports. Now, from a leadership team perspective, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to help our members be better members. One of the ways that we can do that is by helping them to give more referrals. That's what I said. We want to help them give more referrals. One of the ways that you can give more referrals is by making sure that you're paying attention during the chapter meeting. You're paying attention during the commercials to listen to what people are talking about, to listen to what people are asking for when they're giving their weekly presentations. Now, that's what this meeting notes report is for. This meeting notes report is designed so that you can print out a sheet to take notes during the meeting. Seems really simple, but if you just take this report, print this out, my recommendation is that you find the printer in your chapter or somebody like that, maybe even a law office or an insurance office that has a big copy machine, and you get them to print out, one copy of this for all the members in your chapter, put it in front of their place, and get them to take notes during the meeting, so that as people are going around the room, and let's say in my chapter, Matt Peressa is speaking, I want to write down what he's talking about and maybe what referral he's asking for. Now, one of the great things about these reports in BNI Connect is that you can export all of them to Excel. There's usually two export functions at the top of this report. One says export without headers and one says export. Export means it's going to include everything that's on this page. Export without headers means it's just going to include this information down at the bottom. It's not going to include this header information at the top, which really helps from a formatting perspective. So if I go ahead and I click on export without headers, this is going to drop it into an Excel file. And now I really have full control over this report. So if I feel like they don't have enough information or enough place to mark all of the information down, I can expand it. I can make these columns bigger, really whatever I want to do in order to make this report my own. Then I could print it out and make sure it prints the way I want it to. Now, the other cool thing about this report, by the way, just to kick it up a notch, one thing we do in our chapter is we take an extra copy of this report and we pass it around the room. And we write on the top of the report specific referrals. And we ask all of the members to they can only write in if they have a specific referral for the week. So it has to be a name of a company or something like that. They're asking for a specific referral. And then one person in our chapter types that up and we email it around. So for example, my chapter meeting this morning, Robin used this meeting's notes report and she typed out all of the specific referrals that people were asking for. Now, this is awesome because I now have a record of everything that everybody asked for. I keep this in my email so that if a couple of weeks goes by and I run into somebody, I think I remember somebody that asked for that, I can now search in my email and go back and recall who asked for that referral. Again, it's helping me to give better referrals. Everybody wants to get better referrals, but we also need people to give those referrals. A couple of questions here. Igor says the meeting notes report would be great if there was a phone number. That is a great suggestion. I will make sure to take a note of that one. So thank you. I think it would also be great to have pictures next to each person's name. John says about a link that tracks to global. I'm not sure that particular link off the top of my head, but we can take a look at that after. Glenn says, he says, can I mention that they will continue to use the chapter sheet that has this information? So many chapters will continue to use the chapter sheet that has this. Let's see, I think Ilona says, we do that at the BNI Beachside. So great minds think alike. Thank you so much. Igor says, how can we get people connected in different countries with each other? So tell you what, if we have a couple of minutes towards the end of this webinar, after I go through a couple more reports, I will show you how to use BNI Connect to find people around the world. Fair enough, Igor? All right, so let's take a look at a couple of other reports in here. Statistics, obviously, big thing, summary POMS report. The summary POMS report is fairly straightforward. You can run this for any length of time you want to, so you can go back to the beginning of history for your chapter if you want, and get the, I can go back to 1996, our chapter wasn't even in existence then, and I can get all the stats going back in time. Of course, I choose a pretty long time range, so it takes a minute to perform, but I can get all the stats for my chapter going back to 1996 or so. One thing to keep in mind when you're running this is that the default is to not display the dropped member names, but their contributions in the yellow column, the total column, will always include all of the members in the chapter. Some other helpful reports for leadership teams. The absence report is great. The classification's not in chapter. Now, I personally love this report being on the leadership team because it helps me, and I'm sure this has never happened in your chapter, but let's say you're doing a stack day, you're doing a visitor's day, something like that, and a member comes up to you and says, you know what, I give up. I can't think of anybody else to invite to my chapter. I've invited everybody in my contact list. I can't even think of another category to invite. That's really what this report is great for. I can run this report, and all this is going to show me is it's going to show me all of the categories that are not currently taken in my chapter. So renovations and plumber and business attorney and mortgages. These are all categories that are not taken in my chapter, and then it tells me how many other chapters in my region have that category taken. So this tells me a couple of things. It tells me that, these are people that I should be inviting, and it tells I should be inviting them because one reason is I'm not competing with other chapters to fill that position. It also means that if I'm approaching a plumber, for example, I can say, hey, Mr. Plumber, there's a number of other plumbers in BNI in our region. It's a pretty good position to be in. I've even seen some chapters take this list, which is ridiculously long, by the way. So it has every category that has ever been recorded in BNI. Things like marine craft repair, and Pilates, cashback cards, payroll, computer software training, underwater basket weaving, all sorts of things that you may not have thought of before. So I've seen some chapters print this out and just give lists to people to say, hey, invite somebody from this category. Some other things that are in here, there's the speakers report, there's the VP reports that we went over in the last webinar. One thing you can do also is we talk about the gains exchange in BNI a lot. So before you meet with somebody, you want to be looking at their profile, or you want to be looking at their gains. Their gains can be accessed by either just looking at their profile, or you can run a report for that. This is great for secretary treasurers as well, but you have the member details report. And here you can, for example, if I'm going to be meeting with somebody, I can click on View Member Gains, choose them from the list, and I can see their gains profile here. Or if I'm looking at my own, I can then copy and paste this or mail it out, whatever I'd like to do with it. I can also view somebody's bio from their secretary treasurer. I can view their TOPS report, as well as their weekly presentations. Of course, there's the chapter visitor report that we looked at before, length of membership report, the traffic lights, and again, the visitor registration report. Now, in the United States, we don't see the CATS report. Let me just switch over to Australia real quick, and I'm going to choose a random chapter here. But at the bottom of the list, you'll also see the member commitment report, the CATS report. So you can, again, run these for a time period. And this will give you your CATS report. One thing to note for people that are fresh on this webinar is that the CATS report may look slightly different than what you're used to in BNI Web. One of the reasons the statistics may be slightly different is that one-to-ones are counted for both parties. Whenever you do a one-to-one with somebody, both sides of it get credit, even if it's a, I believe, what you call a one-sided one-to-one. It still always both people get credit. So that might cause some slight differences in what you're used to in this CATS report for a short period of time. Gail says, what is the TOPS report? So the TOPS is part of your member profile. It's on your bio of your member profile, and it stands for your the top in certain categories, the tops in certain categories. So your top referral, your top client, your top, your best BNI story, things like that. And it's things that you can fill out on your bio. Let's see, Celso says, so is this a new BNI Australia guideline too, that one-to-ones will always be credited both ways? Yes, especially if you're submitting the online slips, BNI one-to-ones will always be credited both ways. That is now a worldwide standard. All right, so again, feel free to go through reports. You can't break any reports, so click through them, take a look at them. But I know we had some other questions, more on the social media side. How do we dig into BNI Connect a little bit more? So if you guys are okay with it, what I'd like to do is show you guys some things like what Igor was asking. And Igor was asking, how do we connect with other people? How do we view people from around the world? Before I do that, just a quick note from Bob. Bob says the default setting of crediting one-to-ones both ways may need our chapters to review their target CATS scores for their chapters. That is a very good point. Essentially, you might have to, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you might have to actually double your target or your goal for the number of one-to-ones until you come back in line with the new way of reporting both sides. So would that be a correct assessment, Bob? All right. Excellent. So you guys want to see how to find people in BNI Connect, how to use some of the, I guess, the social media side of things? All right. So let's take a look at that real quick. So if you want to really use BNI Connect and start to connect with other people around the world, for example, let's say that you guys want to connect with me. I would be happy to connect with all of you. The way to do that is to really do a search against the BNI Global Directory. Now, On the BNI page here, you can click on My Network on the left-hand side. Now, the My Network has really a lot of the social media stuff here. There's the connections and the groups. Your region can share documents with you, things like reports and visitor sign-in sheets and things like that. There's also testimonials and events, and there's an internal messaging system. But the connections list is really your first level list of people that you're connecting with in BNI. To search for people and connect with them, or just to look up other people, what you can do is under this My Network is click Add. Or from any screen in BNI Connect, use this magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner. Both of those will take you to the same place. And this is the search. This is the search across the BNI global directory. Again, we are one big happy BNI family now. 170,000 plus members around the world are all accessible here through this BNI directory. So, for example, let's say I would like to connect with Bob Greenup, one of my favorite people in the Australian world. I'm going to go ahead and search for Bob. The easiest way to do that is to just search by somebody's name. So you're welcome to search for me. My name is Jeremy Walsh. I'm going to search for Bob here. And if I search for Bob, it is going to pull up one exact match. He is the only Bob Greenup in the entire BNI world. I can see that he's in the company, what city he's in. I can click on his name here, and this is going to pull up Bob's profile. It does open it in a new tab here. I can see Bob's smiling face. I can see the different things that he's involved with, which chapters he's a director consultant for, an executive director for. I can see his My BNI business description, his keywords, his company name. If I want to get in touch with Bob, I can do that. I can call him up. I have his phone number here. I can go visit his website. I can look at his social media links, his address information. Even better, I can look through the rest of his profile. I can take a look at his bio and his weekly presentations and his game profile and his tops profile. I can take a look at people he's connected to. He's connected to Louise and Sandra. I can look at his testimonials. He doesn't have any testimonials yet, but he soon will have some, I am sure. There's also a photo sharing gallery. I can see what groups he's participating in and his training history as well. Now, if I'd like to connect with Bob back on the home screen here, I can add Bob to my connections. I can now customize a message and say, hey, Bob, thanks for being on both webinars tonight. I'd like to add you to my connections and click submit. Now, hopefully, Bob will accept my connection request, and then he'll be a part of my first level connections and be in my address book. Now that I've sent him a connection request, you'll notice that this has gone away. I don't have that anymore to send him a connection request. So I can close out of this window and go back to my original search. Now, you don't have to search by name. You can search by categories as well. So let's say that I'm connecting with somebody. I'm going to be traveling. Let's say I'm going to be going to Florida coming up soon. And when I go to Florida, I would like to get a massage when I go to Florida, or I'm probably better off getting my wife a massage. So I can look for, let's say, massage in Florida. It's going to search across the database and come back with all of the massage people, or the first 250 of them anyway, in Florida. So I can look through and I can click on various people. I can, let's say, look on Carmen's profile here. I can see, now Carmen unfortunately doesn't have a picture uploaded yet, but at least she is sharing some profile information like her phone number, and I can shoot an email to her if I would like to connect with that person. I can close out and go back to my search, and I can search for other things as well. There's also an advanced search. So if I go back up here, there's an advanced search button. So you can search against specific things like just first name or last name, especially if it's a very common name or a name that could be confused with other things. I happen to have a director here in the Rhode Island region. His first name is Peter, his last name is George. So he actually has kind of two first names. That can get a little confusing when you're doing a search, so I can search specifically for the last name of George. Or just for certain industries or just certain countries. So it really is a pretty extensive search. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that it is a database search. We do not have the budget of Google, so we don't have a bunch of fancy algorithms that take wild and surprisingly accurate guesses at what it is you're trying to look for. It is a specific search against fields in a database. So keep that in mind when you are coming up with your searches. So Igor, does that help to answer your question of how do we connect with other people around the world? All right, I'm glad I was able to help there. All right, so we're about 10 minutes towards the top of the hour. What I'd like to do is just to open this up. I'm a little scared to do this, but open this up wide open to questions. So what questions do you have? Again, I have plenty of time. We do not need to end this webinar at the top of the hour necessarily. So whatever questions you have, I would absolutely love to answer those for you. All right, John says, love the connecting with other chapters near and far. Naomi says, please answer my question. All right. So Naomi says, with upcoming speakers bio, how does the treasurer request members to update their speaker bio so it is current prior to their 10-minute speech? So with updating the bio, there isn't an automatic function in BNI Connect to do that, to remind them or to tell them to do that. There's a couple of different functions. So in BNI Connect, as a secretary treasurer, you can go to Operations Chapter, go to Meeting Management, and click on View Edit Speakers. And here you can assign upcoming speakers. So let's say I'm going to look for the speakers in May, and this particular chapter has a speaker for the 5th and the 12th and the 26th. I can assign a speaker for another week. I just choose the date here. And I choose a speaker from the list. Enter a topic, and I could then submit that, and that speaker would be scheduled. Now, this particular function does send them an email 6 days before their speaking event and 3 days before, reminding them of it. It doesn't particularly tell them, fill out your bio. Although if that's something you feel is important, please talk to your executive director. They may be able to update the template to put into that automatic reminder, please update your bio. Now, to update your bio, you would do that here in BNI Connect. So you could fill out your profile. Filling out your profile means that you only have to fill it out kind of once, and it's always a part of the profile. To fill out your profile in BNI Connect, I'm going to go back to the home screen here, and you'll see a link that says Update Profile My BNI page. You can also, from any screen, go to Options, My Account. Now, on your Options, My Account, on your profile screen, this is all the different aspects of your profile that you can fill out and change. So this is like the My Business description and the keywords. There's all of this information about you can change your username and your question, your answer, you change your password, all of your contact information. These are all your permissions within your profile. And finally, we have our Bio tab. So if members fill out this Bio tab as part of their profile, you will be able to just have this, your secretary treasurers have access to this report. So they can either just look up a member's profile or under the reports section. So I'm going to go to reports now, go to reports chapter. And if you remember, there's this member details report. So the secretary treasurer, or anybody really, can look up the view member bio for any member of their chapter. So as long as they've filled it out in BNI Connect, they'll be able to pull that. So Naomi, does that answer your question there? And that's how you can use really BNI Connect in order to, if they fill out their profile once, they really don't need to be reminded every single time. John also said, how do I find my regional website? If you are a member in BNI, then you can get to your regional website. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says Regional Website. Just click on this button and this will take you. It'll open up a new tab, but it will take you to your regional website. Keep in mind, please, especially because you guys are brand new coming into BNI Connect, your regional website may or may not be set up yet. It is a bit of work to get these set up from the executive directors. So please, if that brings you to some place that you're not expecting, have a little patience. It will be set up shortly, I am sure. So, John, hopefully that answers your question from earlier. Melissa had a question. She said, how do you record substitutes names? There is not a function in BNI Connect to record substitutes or to search for substitutes or to solicit substitutes. You would record substitutes just as a visitor. That's what most chapters do. The difference is that you would not give them credit in the POMS reports. Bob had mentioned, this is going back a little while, I said for the CATS reports in my region, we use a graduated scale for thank you for closed business. It's not in the report. So that helps to level the playing field. So excellent information. Thank you. Jorge or George says, adding to Bob's question regarding one-to-ones, how can we check who is doing what? Let's say a member is not doing many one-to-ones initiated by him or her, but only those which are initiated by others. They're still being credited in the same way. So how do we know who is doing what? George, here's the philosophy behind giving both people credit for the one-to-ones. Even though somebody might not be initiating the one-to-ones, they are still participating. So they are still putting their time into meeting with the other person. And almost always, a one-to-one is multi-sided. There's very few times when it's just somebody sitting at a table giving a 45 or 60-minute soliloquy about their own business. It's usually an interactive exchange between the two people. That's why it was felt that giving both people credit for putting their time into it was an acceptable thing, even though temporarily it felt like it was inflating the numbers. So even though somebody might not be initiating it, they are still participating in those one-to-ones. Does that help a little bit? So yeah, I understand that the culture is different. It is a culture shift, and it may take a very, very long time to change. It is something that the rest of the world has been getting used to for quite a few years now. So I do apologize for that. Let's see. Haley asks, who do we speak to about correcting info in our chapter listings? You would first talk to your director consultant. If they have the ability to change it, they will be able to do so. If not, they can go to the regional office, the executive director, and they would be able to change those listings. So again, because you guys just migrated over, there will be a period of transition before some of the information is 100% perfect. Graham asks, do registration invitations expire? Registration invitations, the way that they expire is when somebody successfully registers. There isn't a time expiration with them. What expires them is somebody successfully registers or a new invitation is sent. So only the most current invitation will be valid because it does contain a unique code. Igor says, are we able to log on right now? Can we already set up our profiles? For that one, I know that they are sending out invitations in waves. If you have not yet received your invitation, please check in with your executive director. They will be sending them out over the course of the next week if they haven't sent it out already. So appreciate your patience for that. And if you haven't gotten it yet, it should be coming very soon. Glenn says, tell Igor that I've invited him. So Igor, you should have an invitation right about now. John says, I would love to know how I can send a link to visitors to pre-register. So right now, again, John, because your regional website is not up and running yet, you can't send them a link to pre-register. However, once your website is up and running, you'll be able to go to your regional website. Now, I just did this, as a matter of fact, the other day myself. I went to my regional website, and I went to my chapter page. I went to find a chapter. I did a search for my chapter. And you can go to this, visit this chapter, and you can send them this link. Now, you'll notice that this link is ridiculously long. You can also go to your chapter website, and there's a Visit Chapter button here. This link is actually much shorter. You can copy and paste that link and send that. So there's two different links. They both bring you to the same place that you can send to a prospective visitor. So hopefully that helps, John. Glenn says, when will this webinar be available to share with people who cannot attend? I'm hoping to have this up tomorrow. It is 11 o'clock at night for me here in the United States. So after this webinar is over, I will be heading home immediately and going to sleep. That being said, when I get into the office tomorrow, I will get this converted, uploaded to YouTube, and I will send an email out to all of the people here on the webinar today with a thank you for attending, and I'll send a link to the webinar along with that you can go ahead and share. All right, so would that be helpful, Glenn? Ilona says, thank you for two very informative webinars. Loving BNI Connect. Well, thank you very much. Glenn asks, does the completed bio show on the speaker roster? Unfortunately, that does not show up automatically. There's no indication of that. I think that's a great thing there. So that's definitely a suggestion that I'd love to see for a future release. Let's see, we have Janine says, I just tried to register and it failed. Janine, or anybody listening to this, if you are having trouble registering, just send us an email, support@bniconnect.com, or go to support. It would actually be better if you go to support.bniconnect.com. Again, support.bniconnect.com, and click on Submit a Request. If you submit a request, we will just go ahead and get your username and password set up for you. Only takes us a couple of seconds. One of the issues, by the way, is that when you get an email invitation, the link is just ridiculously long. I mean, it's like 40 characters, and sometimes it doesn't copy and paste properly to the browser. That's what causes it to fail. So my suggestion is to try to highlight and copy and paste the entire link into your browser. Or again, just shoot us an email, shoot us a ticket, and we will definitely help you right away. Happy to do that. Bob had a comment. He said currently in his region, they've invited leadership teams and regional team members, and the rest of the members will be invited next week. Celso or Chelso asks, can a prospective member apply online? Right now, we do not have applications available in BNI Connect. We do have online renewals available, but we do not have online applications. Applications are still done on paper through BNI Connect right now. Naomi says, so if I have a potential visitor and I register them, who is notified that there will be a visitor coming? So when that happens, when you register somebody, there are a couple of different notifications that go out. The visitor gets notified. They say, you have been registered for this meeting. They also get that notification 2 days before the chapter meeting, unless, of course, you're registering them the day before the meeting. On top of that, the president, the vice president, the secretary treasurer, all of the visitor hosts, and the director consultant. That entire list of people get notified that a visitor has been registered and will be coming to that upcoming meeting. So a whole bunch of notifications go out. So hopefully that helps, Naomi. John wants to know, how do we upload documents to share or work on? Documents can only be uploaded by regional staff members, so executive directors, regional admins, and in some cases, director consultants. John, I'm not sure what your position is in the region. Are you a director consultant or a regional admin or an executive director? If so, the place to upload documents is if you go to the home screen, and then when you're at the home screen, you go to My Network. If you have permission to do so, you will see an Add button here under Documents. If you do not have permission to do so, then you'll only see the More button. And again, it's only available to regional level roles. John says, absolutely fantastic webinar and lots of opportunities for all. So appreciate the compliment. Thank you so much. Hillary says, we have our bookings payment system set up on Eventbrite, which then notifies the visitor host and vice president of the bookings. Do we have to use BNI Connect system as well? So that's going to be completely up to you, your region, your executive director, your director consultants. We're not forcing you to use BNI Connect. I can tell you that we've had a lot of success using BNI Connect. I can tell you some stories about visitors' days and other things. But if you have an established system, especially in regions where you have to collect payment, Eventbrite, I believe, will allow you to collect payment, whereas we do not have that option directly for registering for meetings here in BNI Connect. So it's a matter of personal preference on that. But please speak with your executive director if you're not one in order to work that part out. Bob wants to know, can we get a list of who attended the webinar? Yes, I would be happy to give you executive directors only, please. If you would like a list of who attended the webinar, please send me an email and I will gladly give you the registration list. Executive directors only, please. Jorge wishes me a good sleep, and thank you. Craig says, I have 2 very informative webinars, and you are welcome, Craig, as well. Hillary says, BNI Connect looks awesome. Glenn says he also has sent out the invites similar to Bob from earlier. John, how do I search for chapter meetings? Again, you're going to be doing that through the regional website when it becomes live. If you're a director consultant, you can also do that by choosing different chapters from the drop-down. Frida wants to know, can I view my profile as the outside world sees it? And absolutely, 2 ways. On the inside of BNI Connect, scroll to the bottom of the page, and you'll see a link that says Profile. This will show you your inside profile. Again, your inside profile, members only profile. The members only profile shows more information than the public profile. So if you'd like to see your interior, your members only profile, click that profile button. Again, this is my profile. So it's going to show all of my things along with my profile. It shows my bio, my connections, my testimonials, my picture library, the groups I'm participating in, and my training history. Now, as far as what the public sees, what you really need to do is just go search for yourself on the regional websites. Go to regional website in the upper right-hand corner. And again, it may not be set up yet. Once it is set up for your region, click on Find a Member and do a search for your name. So I'm just going to do a search for Jeremy Walsh. And here's my profile. And now I can check what people see when they search for me. You'll notice that on the external profile, there's the contact information, the My Business description, and the TOPS profile. So it does not have the testimonials or the connections or the groups or things like that. So hopefully that helps. Frida? John says the VP of a chapter and co-working with the member chapters. So, yep, again, you're going to use the regional website to register for other chapters on that. Meredith says, thank you for your time today, and you are very, very welcome, Meredith. This is what I love to do. Love answering questions about BNI Connect all day, every day. Celso says, I'm trying to manage the chapter website. If I try to access it, nothing shows up. Is this function up yet? So by the way, it's Celso with an S sound, so thank you. I apologize. I am not necessarily good at reading names. So Celso, that it really depends on whether your regional website is working yet. So if once your regional website is up, your chapter website will be up. Until your regional website is up, you'll be able to work on that preview site. You'll be able to work on the preparation for it. But only when the regional site goes live will your chapter site be live as well. So hopefully that helps, Celso. Let's see. Jody says, thanks. Very informative. Jorge says, need to go. System seems great. Thank you. Let's see. Naomi says, what if my visitor hasn't given me their email address? On the form, that field is required. So you are correct. It is a required field, and the reason for that is it does kick off this whole email campaign. So without the email address, we can't kick off the email campaign. Worst case, and I hate to say this out loud, especially because this is being recorded, but you could put in a fake email address, but I didn't tell you that. So worst case scenario, that is something you can do, though. But it would kind of undermine a big piece of that, really the accountability process of registering a member for a visit. You're welcome, Frida. And you're welcome, Glenn. Bob says, chapter websites are in development now. And Celso says, thank you, and you're welcome. And again to Greg. Naomi says, LOL sneaky. John has to head off to his chapter meeting. Good luck at your chapter meeting, John, and I hope you have some good referrals today. Lynn looks forward to exploring BNI Connect and getting some logins. Ailey says, thank you so much for your presentation. It's been great and reinforces and gives great insight into the reporting options. And you're welcome. And Naomi, which I believe has the last word here, says, thanks. It's been very informative. Are there any more questions? Any questions at all? I would love to continue to answer questions if anybody else has any questions. Glenn says, go to bed. All right, just a couple of reminders. Again, this is being recorded. You'll find it on the support site, support.bniconnect.com. You will also find it at youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. And by the way, I would absolutely love it if you gave us a like. Facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. This is our Facebook site. We do webinar tips and tricks and reminders and all sorts of stuff here. I'd really like to get to 10,000 likes. So if you and 900 of your closest friends could please give us a like here up on our Facebook page, that would make me very happy as well. All right, the questions board is cleared. I welcome you to participate in future webinars, and thank you guys so much. Happy connecting.